Hello, good evening, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Lockdown here on the Joy News channel. We're also live on all our social media platforms, also on myjoyonline.com and affiliates across the country. Tonight, it's my pleasure once again to come into your homes, and of course, thank you so much for always giving us that warm welcome. It's a Sunday night, and tonight we are doing something different. And we're moving from the normal terrain. I'm sure you know how we do it in the studios. Today, we are in the warm offices of a great man. He needs no introduction, but I would attempt to introduce him. He is an author, he's a chancellor, he's an evangelist, most of all, a great man of God at that. I'm sure it's a good time to introduce to you the founder of the Perez Chapel International, Bishop Charles Agyinasare. Good evening and welcome to the Lockdown, sir.
Thank you, Emifa.
I've been hoping to interview you and have a sit down like this, so it's my singular honor. Good evening once again.
Thank you. I've been watching you, and I've always prayed that I won't fall into your trap, but here am I.
This is a safe trap, I should say. You are in good hands. Thank you very much for giving us this honor of being on our show tonight. But is Jesus still in the miracle business? Precious One. I've been hoping to ask you what's Precious One and how you used to do it. What exactly is it? Is it that's your way of doing?
I believe that everybody is precious in the eyes of God.
Okay.
And so that's how come we start our program with Precious One. And then Jesus is still in the miracle business because his power has not changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so we keep doing the miracle business of God.
I'm sure before we go, we'll definitely get a miracle before we go. And I'm glad to hear that I'm a precious one in the eyes of God as well. But you've been in the news lately, a number of things, and I'm sure the audience are also dying to ask you a lot of questions. We'll get into it. But this show is traditionally a COVID show. It was born out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been through it all. Restrictions have been eased. Our airports now open. But really, let's talk about the impact of COVID-19 from where you stand. How has it been?
It's been very tough because for most of the churches in Ghana, we are used to dealing with the people. They come in their numbers, and even though there were a few online platforms, but we weren't taking advantage of it. And then suddenly COVID comes, and you can't meet your people. And not only can you not meet them, they won't have the opportunity because churches do a lot of things. They have staff and all that, and most of all this is supported by the people. And so the people are not coming. You are not meeting the people. We did virtual services. I mean, if you have an auditorium the size of ours, where you have thousands of people coming, and then now you have to be in there. And initially, you didn't even have 100 people. So you can imagine how it felt like. Yeah. And then when it was 100, it was also preaching to an empty building. It's very challenging.
Okay.
Some don't even realize that churches have staff other than those who preach. And so the staff must be paid. You are running schools, you are running clinics, etc. And all that takes money. And it's the monies that come that do it. And so COVID coming in disrupted the plans of everybody.
Okay.
And I met with our staff and I said to them, with COVID, it's not something that anybody has been through before. So nobody really prepared for it because in the past, how many years, we haven't had a pandemic like that. And so you don't really have anything in your lifetime to make you think that something like that can happen. And so it was not easy, but God's grace was was with us, and we've gone through it.
Well, so it looks like the church was also not spared in all this.
Oh, not at all.
But I'm curious, is COVID-19 a demonic disease? What exactly, how would you describe it? What would you say it is?
It is a demonic disease, because in the book of Revelations, the Bible talks about the pale horse and the one who sits on it, hell and death. Now, I believe that a spiritual portal was opened. And when the portal was opened, you see, scientifically, we have the way we define it. But spiritually, there was a woman in Luke chapter 13 that doctors will say had a curvature of the spine that Jesus healed. She was bowed together and could in no wise lift up herself. But Jesus said a spirit of infirmity had bound her. And so the scientists have a way of defining it, but I see it from the realm of the spirit that it's a portal that was opened. The spirit of death and hell came out, and they were attacking people. And that is why I believe that the reason why in Africa we've had the scourge not as bad as other places is because of the way we took it up in prayer. Because all over Africa, Christians were praying, fasting and praying days on end. Because we don't have the things the Westerners have and the developed countries have. They have, I mean, they were dishing out COVID, expense and all that. Some were getting as much as $2,000 for staying at home. We don't have it.
We got free electricity and water.
Yes, but you see, so if it were the same here, the number of people who would have died, because they have the hospitals, they have enough doctors. In fact, it is said that we have more Ghanaian doctors in America than in Ghana. So it wasn't easy. Yes, yes.
Well, but let's come back to other issues. I'm surprised that seeing you, are you really 50?
Oh, I'm 1.5 years to 60.
Ah, okay. So
I'm 58.
58.
Yes.
No, you don't look it. You look younger than that.
Well,
is it the grace of God?
It's the grace of God.
Okay. Well, and you've been married for what, 35 years?
35 years.
How did you do it? I'm interested.
Which part?
The whole 35. Like, how do you do it? Like, is it because you're a man of God? Like, these days, we don't have marriages lasting that long. So 35 years, you need to be commended. Congratulations.
Thank you. Marriage is the only institution that you receive the certificate before you go into the institution. It's the only one. I don't know why God made it that way, but most marriages don't last because people don't prepare for it. Anything you don't prepare for, you abuse it and you take it for granted. And so if you don't prepare for marriage, you don't know who a husband is, you don't know who a wife is, and you go into the relationship, you abuse the relationship. And so as a young man, when I decided to marry, I read all I could get on marriage. My wife also read all she could on marriage, because we didn't see people who had married and not done a second marriage that successfully, both of us. And so we thought that we were going to do that, and till death do us part.
Amen. I'm sure in this whole journey, you must have heard a lot, including the fact that your wife is not the only woman that you see or you've been with. Is that the case? Have you heard that before?
I don't normally hear that.
Okay.
Because when you came to our offices, for instance, you discover that most of our offices have glass doors. It's intentional, so that you can't do counseling alone. And so one time somebody insinuated that, oh, your bishop, and a lady from the church, she said, oh, but you can't even befriend the bishop, because when you do, your heart will break. He's always talking about his wife. Every year he will celebrate his anniversary with his wife. And when you go into his office, now I had to be, it was after my 25th wedding anniversary, my church board, made up of very prominent people, they said, Bishop, we trust you. We don't want you to keep maintaining this glass door. We want you to have a security door. And so they put a security door for me. But otherwise, all our offices are mostly. And then anytime I've had an office, my secretary has access into my office, and he can walk in at any time without knocking.
I've seen that. I've seen
yes.
that.
And then from a young man, my ministry flourished early. And so I've had a driver. And the only time I drive is when I'm taking my wife and my kids out. Otherwise, I don't go out alone. I don't stay in a hotel alone. And so it will be difficult and impossible to do what people may insinuate that it looks like.
But when you hear such things?
Oh, it doesn't even, because I mean, and I say it regularly, that I'm privileged to have been married to a woman for 35 years, that she's the only woman I've kissed in 35 years, the only woman I've smooched in 35 years, the only woman who slept in my bed in 35 years.
And she's a neve?
Yes.
Yeah. So we understand why. Well, so I'm sure, I'm curious, do you watch the news, do you read the papers? We've heard other pastors say that because of these things, they don't do it. How often are you?
When I'm in my car.
Okay.
I watch the news. I'm able to get access on the TV in my car. And then when, I'm on the road, I listen to the news. Okay. Most mornings when I'm exercising, I try to do that. And then some evenings I do that. Okay. Yes.
So, yeah, I'll tell you why I'm asking if you listen to the news and all that. But let me take you into other realms now. Issues about national development, our politics, first of all, as a nation. Many have said that it is a polarized area. But I want to take your brief thoughts on the state of affairs of this country as you've seen it.
Ghana has come a long way. You look at our nation, before the Fourth Republic, I grew up when the AFRC, PNDC, Liman. And so for most of that time, we had military rule. Yeah. And there was not much transparency. You couldn't say what you wanted to say. There was a certain culture of silence. And then we had the 92 Constitution, which some call the People's Constitution, and then things changed. Now, we had what in Akan we call Kambi Mamin Kambi. Amembo. Speak your mind, let me speak my mind. And so that democracy. And then we began to gradually build our institutions, our legal institutions. We began to make it such that our military and police will be institutions that are not politicized, etc. So we've come a long way. And when you look at the sub-region or you look at Africa, we've done well. But we are far from, because from 2015, England has had 3 general elections, 2015, 2016, 2019. Nobody was stabbed. Yeah. Nobody died. We had a registration exercise. Stabbing, killing, fighting. And so for me, I think that we've come a long way, but there's a lot more to do. Yes. Yes.
There's a lot more to do in which particular areas you would say, because I've talked about how polarized our political atmosphere has been, or the scene as we've seen it. We have a few months to go into the election. Which areas particularly do you think that we need a lot of work on as a nation?
Going into the elections, if you say going into the elections, then I would say that we want peaceful elections. We want to make sure that the EC will be as neutral a referee as they can be. We want our military and police to be professional. They shouldn't harass people. I was not too impressed when I saw some video clips during the registration where soldiers were asking people. I mean, for soldiers, their presence alone puts the fear of man in you.
Yeah.
You know, so going into the elections, I want to see the soldiers and the police act professionally, unless somebody misbehaves. I don't think that the soldiers and the police should, you know. We want to have peaceful elections. We don't want to see vigilantes. We should grow about that. Going into the elections, that's what I want to see.
Okay, but there are some who say that there's so much lack of trust for the referee in this whole thing, the Electoral Commission, I should say. We've heard many of the political parties, especially the opposition, depending on where you stand, depending on who is in government, they always accuse the EC of not being an independent referee. There have been calls for stakeholders to raise concerns about that. How do you hope that we'll be able to trust the Electoral Commission such that whatever they do, everybody would accept?
I think that the EC can learn from Afarijan, who was appointed by Rawlings. But Afarijan was able to superintend over an election that got Kufuor into power, or the MPP into power. Even the past EC, I thought that even though she was appointed by the NDC, she ushered the MPP into power. And so the EC should take a cue from these people and try to do the best she can. She must leave a legacy of being a very neutral referee. She must prove, you see, at times people think that when women are in positions like that, they can be made puppets, or they are puppets. She should prove that she's not a puppet. And if she does that, her name would go into our history books as somebody who, because this is a very testing election, because we have a former president who has served one term, and we have an incumbent president who has also served one term. And they all want to have a second term. And so this is a very history-making election. And I would encourage the EC to make her face like a flint and go for it and be neutral.
Okay, so it appears that every Sunday, I don't know, I'm sure the major services we have here at Perez should be Sundays like the others. It appears that now every Sunday you have the media coming to church, not to worship, but to hear what Bishop Charles Agyinasare has in terms of, some have described it as hugely political. Is that the case? Really, I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes, I've heard that, but I get amazed because for what some of the things I've been saying them over the years, irrespective of which government is in power. I remember in 2008, during the elections, when there was a tension, I spoke publicly and said that President Kufuor, as the father of the nation, must speak. Up until that time, he hadn't spoken, and he spoke. And so you could see that. I remember just after President Kufuor took power, his very good friend was President Gbagbo. Now, I was invited by then President Gbagbo, when he was elected, to come and preach his Thanksgiving inaugural service. And I got in there, and instead of going with a congratulatory message, I went and I told them what the leaders of the government should not do, and if they did, would plunge the nation into chaos. And 2 years, in fact, that day when I spoke after the meeting, some said, You came to insult our political leaders. You came and you were political. You are not an Ivorian, but see what you came to do. But 2 years down the line, there was a coup d'etat. And President Gbagbo invited me and said, all the things you said, they've come to pass. When Professor Atta Mills was president, and I knew Professor Atta Mills before he became vice president, and we remained friends when he was vice president and when he was president. I spoke, he visited me, and I spoke on corruption and asked that he should deal with corruption and all that. During the Togo, when Fuare Nyasingbe was made president, there was a squabble. I mean, there was tension, and people were fleeing because first they made him president after his father died after 38 years of being in power, and so the people said no. Then ECOWAS said, okay, he should step down, let there be elections. He stepped down, and he won the elections, and the people said it was rigged. So there was confusion. And I went to Togo and met all the pastors and the Christian leaders and everybody in their Palais de Congrès. And I spoke about how they should go about it. And people thought I was being political. I was choosing sides with the president. But I was saying to them, it was better to have a nation together than to have a nation where people are sleeping or carrying their Vono mattresses. When President John Mahama was in power, anytime he visited us in church, I preached a message that will prick his conscience and his followers, because for some of them, the only time they get the opportunity to hear messages that will prick them is when they come to church. And so it's not something that I've just started doing. I've been doing it. Only that this time, maybe because I'm getting to 60, people feel that it should be so pronounced.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, I've heard you use the French phrase, le Palais de Congrès.
Yeah.
Tu parles français?
Un peu.
Un peu, un peu. Okay. Well, so you ended on the John Mahama note that
Yes.
He's been coming to your church and you pricked his conscience with some of your messages. You've been described as a friend. Is he a close friend?
He and his wife, they are friends of mine, because you see, Ghana is a small country. We know almost one another.
Yeah.
Tamale is smaller, and I pastored in Tamale for a number of years, and His Excellency John Mahama and the wife were in Tamale. Not only, they are not the only people who are my friends.
Okay.
The late Vice President Aliu Mahama was my neighbor. Yeah. So when he was vice president, I mean, when we met, we related because he was my neighbor. President Kufuor, I even do a lot of stuff for his scholarship and whatever foundation. Yes. So I have all these people who are friends of mine. You know, there are times I get amazed how people try to make it look like you can't. We know a lot of these people before they came into power.
Yeah.
Yes. Nana, our president, Nana Addo Dankwa, I've known him from when he was Attorney General, Foreign Minister, etc.
Yeah.
Since he came to office, anytime he's invited us and I'm available, I've been there. I mean, during the COVID, we met with him regularly to discuss issues. During the COVID, we exchanged phone calls. When he had to go in to rest a bit because he had been working so hard, I sent him a text message to let him know that we were praying for him. Okay. So the day he came out of rest, he called me and said, Bishop, I'm out now. So, you know, it's amazing. People make it look like we are enemies and we have some people. No, it's not like that.
Are you NDC?
I'm not.
I'm not NDC?
No.
Okay. So you have a relationship with all
every
of them.
one of them.
But how come it's largely said that it appears that you are more lenient towards the NDC than you would be to the NPP?
When we started church in 1987, our colors were red, yellow, blue. And so anytime we had a major function, and this was 87, before MPP was born, anytime we had a major function, people said, and we decorated, people said I was MPP.
Oh.
So, because of the colors. So when we were changing our name from Word Miracle to Perez Chapel, I was very particular that, look, let's change the colors in such a way that we won't be branded. But in this country, depending on what you say at what time, you are branded. If you say something in a time when it favors a particular group, then you belong to the group. Or if it's insinuated, and there are times people, you know, your fraternity, the media, our fourth estate of the realm, in Akan we say,
why?
They help build you, they help kill you. So there are times they will take something you have said and give it a twist. And like you know, when a dog bites a man, it's not news.
Yes.
When a man bites a dog, it's news. So once they put the twist on it, everybody will go there. And so I think that when they put that twist, they have a lot of traffic. So
are you saying that most of the things that you may have said and reported, there may be twists on it?
Oh, just the headlines.
Okay.
You know, there are times, and most people don't even read the story. So there are times that the headline is a bit mischievous, and it creates a lot of traffic. But then when you go into the story and you read the story, the headline and the story, they are different.
I'll bring in the audience questions shortly, because I see a number of questions from the audience. Pardon me, let me just go through a few of mine. Then we'll go through yours, because I've been dying for this opportunity as well. But are you on a regime-changing agenda?
No.
You're not?
Why would I want to change regimes when I believe that political parties have the same mother? Because I heard one of the notable MPs say that his brother is MPP, he is NDC. We know the late Right Honorable Speaker was NPP, his son is NDC. We know Honorable Shariaite is NDC, the brother is MPP. And so they said, that, well, they never see opposition because so why would I then decide that when the nation is at stake, I would choose sides? I won't do that. It's bigger than a political party. Okay. It's the nation we are talking about.
Thanks for staying with us. You're still here on the Joy News channel. Shortly, we'll be crossing over to the Jubilee House to join President Akufo-Addo as he delivers update number 17. After that, we'll take a quick reaction and then we'll go back to that interaction with Bishop Charles Agyinasare. Don't worry, we'll bring you all that you need to know in terms of that intriguing conversation with the founder of Perez Chapel. But now, though, we'll welcome our listeners on Joy 99.7 FM together with a dozen affiliates across the country. But then, before that also, let's go now live to the Jubilee House for update number 17 from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Amunya ready? Well, once we get all the all clear, we'll go to the Jubilee House for update number 7 with President Akufo-Addo giving us update on our fight against COVID-19. The prediction, the word on the street is that he may be lifting the ban on sporting activities. We don't know about beaches and nightclubs and cinemas just yet, but we wait to hear from the president on these issues. But I think all is clear now. Let's go back to the Jubilee House.
And renewed hope that we are on our way to winning the battle against the pandemic. The improvement in the situation is all thanks to the effectiveness of the measures put in place by government, the cooperation and support of you, the Ghanaian people, and most certainly by the grace of Almighty God. Nevertheless, I appeal to each and every one of you to continue to tread on the path constructed by government and follow religiously all the social distancing, mask wearing, and enhanced hygiene protocols. They are and will remain our weapons in the struggle against the virus. In the same manner, we have to remember to continue improving our fitness by exercising and eating well, patronizing our healthy Ghanaian foods, which will boost our immunity to disease and help us in the fight against the pandemic. When I delivered update number 16, exactly 3 weeks ago, the number of recorded active cases, that is persons with the virus, stood at 1,847. This number, as of Friday, 18 September, has reduced considerably to 507 persons. There are currently some regions in the country without active cases. Greater Accra, Eastern, Ashanti, and Central regions account for some 80% of the active cases. As of Friday, 18 September 2020, the total number of tests conducted is 470,730. So far, a total of 45,258 persons have recovered, and 297 persons, a great majority of them with underlying illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, chronic liver disease, and asthma, have sadly died. In the face of these encouraging statistics, I know there are many who are wondering why I have not announced a complete return to normalcy in all aspects of national life, because they believe the figures suggest we've turned the tide in the fight against the virus. Yes, our death rate continues to be low, and our hospitals have mercifully not been overwhelmed, as there are presently only 20 severe and critical cases. Indeed, there are a lot of empty beds in our treatment centers. In the isolation centers, there are virtually no patients under care. But truth be told, we cannot afford at this critical moment to throw caution to the wind and destroy the incredible amount of work undertaken by government, health officials, heroic frontline health workers, and members of the security agencies in bringing us this far. Now more than ever, we must be even more disciplined in our adherence to the personal hygiene, mask wearing, and social distancing measures that have become part of our daily routines. That is the way to eliminate the virus altogether. The experience in other parts of the world show us that the virus can return with a vengeance once you let your guard down. Fellow Ghanaians, in my last address, I announced the reopening of our international airport, Kotoka International Airport, signaling our gradual reintegration with the rest of the world. 16 out of the 23 airlines that operated in Kutuka prior to its closure have again commenced flights to and from Accra. As of yesterday, Saturday, 19 September, a total of 10,061 passengers had been tested at Kutuka. In spite of the requirement that all passengers must be in possession of a negative PCR test result upon their arrival in Ghana, a test which should have been conducted not more than 72 hours before the scheduled departure from the country of origin. A total of 26 positive cases have been recorded from the tests at Kutuka. Let us pause for a moment and imagine what would have happened if these 26 positives had not been detected and had been allowed to mingle with the population. Even though the cost of 150 United States dollars per passenger for the mandatory airport COVID test has been criticized in certain quarters, the value of the test in its speed, accuracy, and savings for passengers who no longer have to bear the cost of the 14-day mandatory quarantine in hotels has been clearly established. It is worth noting that a lot of people who have experienced it firsthand, the service being offered at our international airport, have praised the country for the innovation and farsightedness on display at our airport. Let me assure you again that as President of the Republic, I will do everything in my power to protect you and stop the importation of the virus into our country or limit and contain its spread. This is my solemn commitment to you. Fellow Ghanaians, on Friday, 18 September, 561,674 JHS3 students completed the Basic Education Certificate Examination, BECE. SHS3 students also, on 5th September, wrote the last paper of the West Africa Senior Secondary Certificate Examination, WACSE. I am particularly excited at this development because despite the fears and genuine anxiety expressed by some and the criticisms proffered by some in the political space, these students have gone to school, studied, sat, and completed their examinations unscathed. Their forward march in life has not been interrupted. And by the grace of God, the predictions made by some of widespread infections and even deaths did not materialize. I pledged I'll be the last person to put the lives of students at risk, and I express my deep appreciation to all parents and guardians for the trust reposed in me and my government. I pray for the success of the students in their exams. As has already been announced, relevant arrangements and logistical deployments are being made for the return to school of second-year, junior, and senior high school students. Continuing students in the University of Cape Coast, the University of Health and Allied Sciences, technical universities, and some other colleges have returned to school, and I've been reliably informed that adherence to protocols is high. Long may it continue. On Monday, 14 September, I extended by executive instrument the mandatory wearing of face masks by another 3 months. So until 14 December 2020, the wearing of masks remains mandatory, and the law enforcement agencies will be required to ensure this directive is respected by all. It has served us well in the fight against COVID-19. So I urge each and every one of us to wear our masks and do so correctly anytime we leave our homes. It is the new normal requirement of our daily existence until the virus disappears. Towards the progressive easing of restrictions, government has taken the decision to allow the resumption of training in all contact sports, taking into consideration the imminent participation of our national teams in international competitions. Indeed, some national teams have already been given the dispensation to begin training ahead of their international engagements. All sports people who are camped are to be tested regularly. Fellow Ghanaians, with respect to football, after due consultations with the Ghana Football Association, it has been decided that the Ghana Premier League and the Division I Football League will restart on Friday, 30th October, with a full regime of testing of the players, technical and management staff. No spectators will be allowed at the training centers. And when actual competition resumes, seating at all stadia will be limited to 25% capacity to ensure social distancing. Wearing of masks by spectators at stadia will be mandatory. The restart of all other sporting competitions will be determined on a case-by-case basis, pending consultations between the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the respective sport associations. Private burials, still with a maximum of 100 persons, can continue to be performed. Our borders by land and sea will remain closed to human traffic until further notice. Beaches, pubs, cinemas, and nightclubs remain closed until further notice. All other institutions that have been cleared to function are to continue to do so in strict adherence to the COVID-19 protocols. Enuanom, Onyankopɔn adaroma, nneɛma ɛyɛ ba ɛwɔ yare no ho. Nanso, ɛda so wɔ hɔ, ɛnkɔɛ. Enti, yɛnkɔ so ndidi nhyehyɛeɛ a aban ɛde ato hɔ no so. Titiri, ufifi a, hyɛ mask, kɔsi bere a wobɛba fie. Ɛno na ɛbɛboa ama yɛntumi apam yare ɛfiri yɛn man mu. Anyamime, nyumodromo, ni bi ya no jogba ye hela befa. Shimon wo hweko hela akra no ewo. Wo ya no ni wo ye hela agbejiani to ni af amlamo kefoshi. Beni afe ni wo ye hela ni nkonim. Titriye ke wo hyehyia wo mask ka si beni wo ba ku ose. Energy noni ba wawo ni wo hwe hela akra ke jamanemi. Fellow Ghanaians, as we work to rid the virus from our shores, let us continue to remember at all times that this virus is no respecter of persons and has wreaked its havoc on every country on the planet. There are countries that are imposing lockdowns all over again. Others are imposing curfews, all in a bid to curb the onset of fresh infections and a second wave. Let us continue to look out for one another and remain each other's keeper. United and with one goal in mind, we will emerge victorious in the fight against COVID-19. 0 active cases must be the ultimate aim. My rallying cry to you all remains, this too shall pass, for the battle is the Lord's. May God bless us all in our homeland, Ghana, and make her great and strong. I thank you for your attention, and have a good night.
Just gone by update number 17 from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo from the Jubilee House. So the easing of restrictions more have been announced. So as it stands now, 470,730 tests in terms of COVID-19 has been conducted. 45,258 have recovered. 297 deaths recorded as at Friday, 18th of September. That's where we stand. And at the airport, since the reopening, 16 airlines have resumed operations as we speak. And 10,061 passengers have been tested. I've been doing some calculations in terms of the $150 charge, and I'm at $1,509,150 million in terms of what has been, received so far in terms of the testing of 10,061 passengers, and 26 of these passengers have tested positive in spite of their negative test that they came in with. 26 of them have tested positive. That's where we are as we speak. And he touched on education as well. 561,644 junior high school students have just completed the exams, as he put out, and he's excited about it in spite of the criticism. And then he's encouraged by their forward march in spite of the widespread cases or issues of their infections and even death. He's also talked about the second year students who are supposed to be resuming. We've talked about UCC, UHAS and other technical colleges who are supposed to go back to school. And on the 14th of September, we reported here also on Joy 99.7 FM and all our platforms that the EI 164 has been extended by 3 more months. It makes mandatory wearing of masks is still in force and sanctions apply. And I'm sure we've all been waiting for this part of the easing of restrictions. Unfortunately, beaches, pubs, cinemas and nightclubs remains closed until further notice. If that's you're waiting for, sorry to disappoint you, remains closed. Private burial still at 100 persons, and they ought to enforce the safety protocols. Wearing of mask is mandatory. The land and sea borders remain closed as we speak, but he's allowing the resumption of training in all contact sports. In all contact sports, training has resumed, and that they will be giving, there's some special dispensation that has already been given to some national teams, and testing will be regular for all these sportsmen and women. For football, the Ghana Premier League is returning, as well as Division 1 Premier Leagues, and it's starting from the 30th of September. That's where we are, but no spectators so far when we resume the Ghana Premier League and Division 1 football. Seating is limited at 25% capacity once we resume, and we are allowing spectators, and they must be in masks, which is mandatory. And that's how update number 17 looks like now as we speak. We are hoping to get some reactions from the Ghana Football Association and, of course, the Information Minister, Kojo Ponkroma. As in when we are able to get them, we'll get some reaction. But at this point, I'll take you back to our interview with the founder of the Perez Chapel International, Bishop Charles Agyinasare. Remember, we're live on all our social media platforms. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on YouTube. Of course, myjoyonline.com. And we're on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. Do stay with us. So I keep on hearing you say your nation. It appears that everything you are saying or everything that you've reported to have said is for a national transformation agenda, correct?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
And how long have you been on this national transformation agenda? Is it just recently that you've started? Because that's the criticism, that it appears that the final lap, that's when you've just started the national transformation agenda.
You see, years ago, I used to do what we call youth explosion. It was all part of a national transformation agenda to try and create a certain awareness for the youth, to educate them, to inform them, to make them build solid character. Now, we've done that for the youth. For 7 years, we're going around the country doing that. Now, we think that as a nation, people must, the awareness must come. For me, irrespective of the successes we have chalked as a nation, there's so much to be done. From your outfit or Joy, I saw this video footage where you filmed the vehicles, gallopers that Rawlings bought at the tail end of his presidency, and then 110 or something, and left them when Kufuor came. They didn't use them. And as at last year or early this year, those gallopers had been reduced to nothing. And we had to pay judgment debt of $1 billion to the company. Okay, Kufuor came. He said there was a deficit of housing. And so we needed housing. Affordable housing. He built affordable housing. And Professor Atamils and His Excellency John Mahama came, and those buildings have still not been used. We see John Mahama build schools, build hospitals, build other things, and then our President Nana Akufo-Addo comes and his government says we won't use it. Now, those monies used in building those things are not their personal monies. It's not from their pocket. It's our national money. And meanwhile, then we've been always having a budget deficit. So we have to always borrow to be able to make our budget work. So we go cap in hand to donor countries, collecting money, and we collect the money and we bring it and we misuse it. For me, it's a misuse. Is there not a cause for me to talk about it? We live in a country where when a new government comes to power, if you are in the civil service, you are afraid. You don't know whether you will maintain your position or, but the civil service is supposed to be non-partisan or non-political. But you are in the civil service. And when a new government comes, you don't know whether you are going home and you've gone to school, you've trained, you know that you chose the civil service or the public service, you know your career path has been spelled out. But because of politics, and nobody should talk about it, and when you talk about it, you are being political.
And these are people they say have worked hard for the party to come to power, so definitely they need to reward them. You don't think it's a system that we should continue?
Should we use the civil service and the public service to reward them? They worked hard for the party to come to power. Yes, everybody works hard. But when you work hard, you must work hard and earn something out of it. That is why I believe that we should discourage people from being vigilantes so that, we should train people. If they have a profession, how many of the politicians have their children being vigilantes, have their children on election day going to fight and do those things? Their children are either reading medicine or law or journalism or something. And so why don't we as a nation, I think we should, the politicians themselves, since 92, they've been telling us they are thieves. That's what the politicians have been saying. They say they are thieves. Because this man comes to power, he calls those people who were there thieves. The next man comes, he calls those who were there thieves. Are we saying that we don't have people who are into politics because they want to be a blessing to this country or they want to serve this country?
But you've seen it all. Do you think that they've come in to really serve, or they are really thieves?
I think that's why we must preach the national transformation agenda. Because of the perception they are putting out there, they make people who are qualified and could have done a good job run away from it. Because if I've got my own money and I want to do politics, and by going into politics, I'll be branded a thief, I would rather stay somewhere. And so it's high time we got to a place where we are able to get people who have achieved and have accomplished to get into politics so that they can implement things. Now, for us as Ghanaians, we have a lot of proverbs. There's a proverb that says that if nakedness promises you a piece of cloth, listen to the name. The person has not done anything with their life. They haven't achieved anything. And they tell you, I'm going to be your so-so and so, and when I become your so-so and so, I will turn your constituency or I will turn your something around. And then we vote them in. And the next time we are crying because the politicians themselves have branded themselves as thieves. I think they should change the narration so that they make it very appealing for other people to get in. Now, to change the narrative, I think some of us must speak, and that is why the National Transformation Agenda, I will be speaking.
Don't you fear the enemies that you'll be making? Because it's interesting that Mr. Ofosu-Ampofo was in your church, for instance, yes, and you looked him in the eye and talked about vigilantism and the leak tape that came out and knowing his involvement and the comments that he may have made about yes, the electoral commissioner, amongst others. Yes. Don't you make enemies for yourself when you do these?
A prophet, a Bible prophet, normally spoke to the conscience of the people. And so for me, as a preacher, I see myself fulfilling a prophetic role. And the prophetic role is to speak into the conscience of the nation. If Jesus were here, Jesus, when he met the fishermen, spoke about fish. When he met the farmers, he spoke about farming. When he met jewelers, he would talk about gold. And so for me, in a country where we have these situations, I will talk about these things.
Well, you're listening to Bishop Agyinasare, Charles Agyinasare, the founder of Perez Chapel. A number of issues that we'll be going into, but it's a good time to take a quick break. I promise when we come back, we'll get into your questions as well, plus other issues that may have come up.